On March 14th, news came out that the developers Turtle Rock Studios have partnered up with Warner Bros. Studios to develop a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead known as Back 4 Blood. And within moments of this news breaking out around the internet, people got immediately excited. For anyone who's unaware, Turtle Rock Studios is the team who were contracted by Valve originally to make the first Left 4 Dead game, but at the time they were known as Valve South. Obviously since then they've departed and went separate ways and founded Turtle Rock Studios, but with this news coming out of nowhere, what do we know about Back 4 Blood? Well, there's nothing. Okay, that's not entirely true. We know that the game is going to be on Unreal 4 and there's a few questions answered beforehand in preparation for the announcement, with the most important one being, is this Left 4 Dead 3? With the most obvious response being no. But they also add in that answer that while you'll be able to shoot up a lot of zombies like in Left 4 Dead, there's going to be a range of new things to help make this game unique. And that's it really. We know it's a thing, we know it's made by the original creators of Left 4 Dead, and that it's coming to PS4, Xbox One and PC. Now, as for if I'm excited for this, then the answer is obviously going to be yes. But also no. Turtle Rock Studios made the first Left 4 Dead and not Left 4 Dead 2, and the game they made next called Evolve didn't really go according to plan and had a bit of a weird launch. But regardless, a new zombie game in the style of Left 4 Dead is definitely going to be great to see. Now the first thing I immediately noticed in this announcement is the elephant in the room. The title. Back 4 Blood. It's not a bad title, don't get me wrong, but it definitely screams at how they're riding the whole "hey guys, we made Left 4 Dead" kind of stick. Now there's nothing really wrong with that entirely, as Valve aren't really doing much with Left 4 Dead 3 at this point, but a problem they might face with the name of this game is that people are going to interpret that as some sort of cash grab, but I don't think that's the case this time round. Now I have a small theory to suggest there's more to the reason of this name, and it revolves around a random release for Left 4 Dead 1 by Turtle Rock Studios a couple of years ago called Dammit, Buried by the Flood. Dammit was a mini campaign stitching the story between the ending of Dead Air to the start of the final campaign Blood Harvest, like the DLC campaign Crash Course which bridged the gap from No Mercy to Death Toll. Now this campaign release came out of nowhere, and at the time it was in an unfinished but playable state. The map had missing textures, missing events, but overall you could complete the campaign. There was just no additional dialogue and certain events didn't make that much sense. Now at the time when this was released, all we got was the idea that they just stumbled across these files on their archives and they thought, hey, might as well just release it for the public to see. But what if there was more to it? I personally think they released this map not only for the fans of the Left 4 Dead series, but also to see if people were still indeed interested in these games and if they'd be excited for the idea of a sequel. And from the moment this add-on went live, the response from players was actually really good. Players were aware that this was an unfinished map, and from what we got, it actually felt like it fit into the Left 4 Dead story. What's surprising is that some modders have actually attempted to finish off this campaign altogether. They're not perfect, but still, it gave the green light for Turtle Rock Studios. Now I personally think as there's been a bit of a gap since the campaign was released to the public, there could be a possibility that Turtle Rock actually approached Valve first, showing the response from fans showing this game was still popular and that they wanted to come back and make a third game again. That's just speculation though, and I don't have any evidence to back this, but if Tyler McVidier's video on Left 4 Dead 3 is anything to go by, which I'll obviously have a link in the description for, there's a possibility that Valve rejected them on the spot, because Valve were possibly working on the game already, or perhaps they were the ones who were actually working on it originally, and because of a debate creating the game in either Source 2 or Unreal, the project was scrapped and then Turtle Rock went elsewhere to restart the project again, and thus Back 4 Blood was born. And it could also hint as to why they even called it that, as it's like Back 4 More but with blood. And yeah, you get the idea. So I think it goes without saying that I absolutely love the Left 4 Dead series, and I've been hoping for years that Valve would make another game in the series, but regardless of what I do think, it's definitely time for a game similar to Left 4 Dead to get the proper spotlight it deserves. And yes, while we do have games like Earthfall, it appears that HoloSpark bit off a bit more than they could chew. Now don't get me wrong, Earthfall isn't a bad game, I actually really enjoy it. The game itself however actually had a really decent post-life, starting off with a new level, a few new weapons and even a survival mode in the Invasion update. But closer to the end of 2018 everything started to slow down and the team went silent. Last I heard, developers left post-launch and very little news has spilled out since the Invasion update, so hearing that the people who originally made these types of games are now back into the game to throw their hat into the ring once more, I'm definitely excited and I'm hoping this will go well for them this time. So as for what we know about the gameplay itself, it's very little, so going from assumptions, let's just say it's going like the original Left 4 Dead formula. So 4 survivors making their way from point A to point B with a bunch of hordes in the middle. The first thing I'd like to see is a bit more depth into each character's playstyle. With Left 4 Dead each character felt like a bit more of a blank template with some dialogue, rather than actually having any real attributes to what they're good and weak with. The reason I say this is because I noticed in the original Left 4 Dead each character had their preferred weapon. Lewis would normally use pistols, Bill would use a rifle, Francis would use an auto shotgun, and Zoe would use a hunting rifle. So at first when I played this game and didn't know much, I actually thought each character had a little bit of a benefit towards a specific weapon in the end. but it actually just meant nothing. In fact, a bit more depth for the gunplay in general would actually go a long way. While guns in Left 4 Dead do feel slightly satisfying, the overall difference in all the weapons feel exactly the same, especially when it comes to Left 4 Dead 2. While they added more weapons into the game, a majority of the new additions like the rifles and shotguns just felt exactly the same as the original weapons with very minute differences. Perhaps if you want to take things a step further with all the items you'll find in the level, like grenades, healing items and so on, perhaps you can find weak weapon attachments that will be temporary and will break over time due to use. As for something I'd expect though, especially if this is going to be something like Left 4 Dead, it's gotta be mod support. At a minimum, a level editor. While all the levels in both Left 4 Dead games were really fun and had a lot of replay value, it will definitely only get you so far. One of the best parts of these games were the maps that you can find on places like Left 4 Dead Maps and the Steam Workshop. The variety in maps you'd get on there is absolutely insane. There's so many different types of campaigns out there to choose from, it will take you a while to get through all of them. And that brings me on to something I'm a bit more hopeful for, but I don't really expect it massively, and that's long-term support. Left 4 Dead post-launch had roughly 3 to 4 new campaigns being added to the game: Crash Course, The Passing and The Sacrifice, and then arguably Coldstream, but that was actually made by a modder with some help from Valve. Rather than it being officially made as a canon campaign, it was just thrown in as a DLC to show what the community could make. Perhaps over time, depending on what direction they take the game, Back 4 Blood could have more content updates over time, either things like new weapons or new campaigns, or hell, even new characters. Again, this is all depending on what direction they take the game. Back 4 Blood could be a huge game. Emphasis on the word could be. A lot of AAA titles these days appear to be promising but end up failing to deliver post-launch, and they just fall into obscurity. But with Back 4 Blood, things are a little bit different. When Left 4 Dead was originally launched, no one really expected it to be as huge as it became, especially on the PC market, and Left 4 Dead 2 just amplified that even more, with player counts still hitting 10,000 players some days, almost 10 years later. Personally, I would love a third installment to Left 4 Dead, but I'm thankful the first 2 games weren't running to the ground and ruined. But Back 4 Blood is probably going to be the next best thing. But with that being said, we do need to take this with a pinch of salt. Turtle Rock Studios made Left 4 Dead 1, but not the sequel Left 4 Dead 2. That was made in-house by Valve, and various things in that game obviously show that. But even though Evolve flopped, it wasn't awful, and I think there's going to be a bit of doubt regardless. But if I can give Turtle Rock Studios one bit of crucial advice that could either make or break the game's sale at launch, don't release this as an Epic Store exclusive. With the amount of drama around that launcher at the moment, that would be like digging your own grave.